So it's Friday, it's that time of the week again. It's time for You Hangout. Today we've got Matt Brailsford and Lee Kelleher. How are you doing, guys?
Really good, good, good.
Hi, Warren. Yes, really good.
Brilliant, brilliant. So if you've not been following on Twitter for the last week or couple of weeks, obviously there's been a lot of hype and kind of mystery around what you guys have been up to. I've been trying to decipher the mystery tweets and the images. So we've got a picture of some blue eggs, and we've got a picture of some fried breakfast or something. I'm still none the wiser.
The clues are all there.
Is it blatant? Is it blatantly obvious?
Yeah, it'll make sense. It'll make sense during the course of this this show. Yeah.
Good. So I don't think we'll bother with introductions for today because it seems like, from what I understand, there's quite a lot to talk through in demo. So maybe Lee, if you just want to jump in.
So yeah, Just for those who don't know me, I'm Lee Kelleher, and I work for a company called Umbrella. So one of the things we do with Umbrella, like one of our main clients, is Carlsberg. So what we've been doing for those is working on like all the different brand sites. And we're using Umbraco as a service, so they've got I think there's a total of like 500 odd websites that are going to be rolled out on Umbraco as a service over time. So what we needed to build was like a kind of quite a dynamic sort of framework for for them to make all these different various sites and try to use the same kind of underlying code across all different brands. So one of the things we did, which was about 12 months ago, was we built something called Mortar. I know some people in the community know it, but we never released it. What it was like a dynamic page builder, almost like the precursor to the grid. So when we heard about the grid coming, we thought, well, this is pretty much what we've been doing in Mortar.
Okay.
But when we saw the demos of the grid, in Umbraco, it's like the UI was much nicer. It was something that we were kind of wanting to use. So what we've done over time to kind of get the long story out is we've taken sort of like the best parts of what we did with Mortar, which was to kind of to reuse DocTypes within this grid, and we've brought some of that over to Umbraco's grid.
Okay, sounds interesting.
So, yeah, this is some of the things we're gonna demo for you today. There's some reasons behind that. I don't know whether to let Matt demo some of this first or not. I'm not too sure how to best prepare it. I mean, what we found with the grid when we started using it was there was some limitations with kind of complex data. So I mean, the standard things that come out of the box with Umbraco 7.2 is like you can just add like rich text editor. You can have sort of custom sort of fragments of things for modules, and then if you want to do anything more complicated, you have to use macros, and then with macros you'd have to sort of rely on parameter editors, which have their own limitations. You can't sort of pre-configure them, and if you can pre-configure them with like pre-value options, you have to hard code those in a config. It just wasn't as flexible as the kind of things we wanted to be able to do with it.
Okay.
So we took the concept of what we did with Mortar and thought about reusing, was it possible to reuse DocTypes within the grid? So I don't know, Matt, I think I should hand over to you. You should do a bit of a demo.
Yeah.
This sounds very, very interesting so far. You have piqued my interest.
Yeah. Okay. Let me fire up a screen share. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see myself. So cool.
So as Lee said we were using the grid, and it's as it comes standard. You get like these rich text editors and headings and things like that. So it's all really nice for like really simple content structures. But if you need to go beyond just inserting rich text and plain text, then you might have complex data structures. So like a team member or something where you need to record first name, last name, job role, things like that, or image galleries where you've got a lot of data stuck in one element. So as standard, the HQ or normal built-in way would be to use macros, but what we've done is allowed you to use a doctype as a blueprint for your data structure rather than a macro definition. So this comes as a grid editor. So when you install it, it comes as a package. You install it. I've got it installed here, but it automatically kind of injects itself into the grid editor config with a baseline config. And then all you need to do once it's installed is find your grid. So here we're just using the standard starter kit.
Yep.
Gone for the grid front page, and so we'll say, well, on the 2 column, when you list what grid editors are allowed within a cell, you get a new one, which is Doctype. So we'll do that for both of those. Sorry, I've just got a U Hangout thing in the way of the save and publish button. Save that and jump to content. So now I'm on the home page, and in the grid, this is the 2 column row config that we just edited. So in here I can now say I want to insert a little doctype, mini doctype inside. So by default, it basically throws up a drop-down list, and you can choose which doctype you want to use. So I just say I want to use example data 1, and it renders all the fields that are in that doctype for us to fill in. So we can just give it a little bit of information. Image, and we'll pick a link, and we can save that, and it'll just in its default state, it'll just pull through the icon of the doctype, so you can see what doctype you have used in that data set.
Okay.
So then it basically does kind of work like the macro grid editor, but instead it's just using the doctype structure. So the plus side to that is that we get things like nice help text. We can use pretty much any standard data type, not just the ones that allow for pre-value editors.
Yeah, so literally any custom property editor that I write with Angular, as long as it's on my document type, I can then edit this in this kind of panel on the right.
Yeah, there's one or two there's one or two restrictions. One is probably the upload control, because it has a special way of working, so it can't work in this, but you can get around that with like the media picker, and I'd say it's like 90%, 99% of data types should work. So
awesome.
There straight away, you're just giving yourself so much flexibility, because you're not restricted by the types that you can use, and just being able to set it up as a doctype as well is just really simple. So now that we've done that, we obviously need to kind of render this in some way. So we've generated some kind of data, but we need to render it. So I've just got a simple partial file here. So the way that the grid editor works is it'll look for a partial file with the same name as the doctype alias.
So is this in the same kind of location as the other kind of editors?
No, this is just straight in your partials folder.
Right.
Views/partials. So this is just a simple view. We inherit from Umbraco view page, but what's kind of special about the doctype grid editor is the model that's passed in is iPublished content, but it's a fake iPublished content. So it contains all the data that you've just entered and constructs a on-the-fly iPublished content entity. So the upside is you can use everything that you're used to using, so you can just do get property value to get any of the keys from your data.
Yeah, awesome.
And the best feature is it also honors all of your your value converters. So as you can see in this instance, we had a media picker, and we've called it image, but I've got a value converter installed, which is converts ints into iPublish contents. So
Yep.
I can basically ask for the image property as an iPublish content, and it'll do all the conversion, and then we can just access properties off of from that model. So
That's
things like
really
the image
neat.
URL. Yeah, and likewise for the link property as well, we can tell it give us a node for that property, and then we can just access the fields straight off of there.
Awesome. So by default, normally the parts of like the grid partials for rendering is kind of dynamic because it's one big massive JSON blob, as far as I remember. So yeah, you're doing some magic or voodoo here to new up a kind of an iPublish content so that we can work with it in a much nicer way.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like this so far. Keep going.
Yeah. So we've created this new partial. We've saved it just in our standard partials file. So if I just reload my editor, this should, so here you can see that it's actually pulled in a preview. So on the fly, that's gone and rendered our partial file, passing in all the node content, and has given us a live preview of our content. So if I change something, it pulls through.
Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So is this the same? Is this the same view that's going to be rendered on like the grid when I render this out to the site, or is this going to be a different one? So if I want to use one for the kind of the grid in the back office and one for the front end, could I do that, or is it the same currently?
It is the same, but you can do similar to what people do when using macros. When it's rendered in the back office, it's rendered through a special URL, so you can look for a parameter in the query string, and if it's there, you know you're rendering in preview.
Ooh, okay, that's a nice way to think about doing
on front end. Yeah, so all your logic would be in one partial file. You can feed something different to the back office, but it's all in one partial file. And as you can see there, it's rendered our partial on the front end as well.
Yeah, nice.
So pulled all of those through. So a few nice configuration options. So as you saw at the beginning, when you choose to select a doc type, you do get a hell of a lot of doc types, and it lists.
Yeah, for example, I wouldn't probably want someone to be inserting a home doc type into my homepage.
Yep, exactly. So I'll show you now. This is the config. So this gets injected in by default when you install the package. So, and we're interested in this little section here, which is config. So ordinarily, we've got an allowed doc types list, which is empty, which just means use all doc types.
Yep.
But what we can do is say, well, actually, we've just got 2 doc types that we really want people to use. So you can just give it the aliases of your doc types. And if I refresh this, I'll just double check. I might have to do a JavaScript clear out, but we'll just see if it worked. Yep. So just clear my cache. And now you can see we've only got 2 doc types to choose from. So you can limit it down. That's a nice way of doing it. And it's also got the ability, if you only had 1 doc type in there, then when you come to choose your doc type, you won't even get the drop down
choice. Yeah, go straight to the editor. Nice.
So what that actually gives you is a really nice way of doing things as well, because what you can do, obviously when we choose here, we've got a doc type icon in here.
Yep.
What you could do is just copy this entire config and rename it. So if you've got like a carousel doc type,
I see where you're going with this.
If you copy this and duplicate it, you can give it a different name. So you could call this carousel.
Yeah, and then where's the icon further down? You could give it a different icon.
So basically, as long as you keep these 2 the same, this is the view renderer and the front end renderer. So as long as you keep those the same, you could insert a different icon, a nicer icon, give it a nicer name, give it 1 doc type only, and it becomes a really nice way of creating like complicated data structures. So instead of having the doc type icon, you could have similar to these, and it goes straight. It goes straight to an advanced data structure. So I think that's kind of it for the.
Yeah, I think I'm still in kind of shock and kind of blown away at the minute. So I presume it still kind of follows the same, because as it is just a grid editor, a very smart grid editor, it follows the same principles of the grid. So I can just say, if we created, like you said in that example, just a carousel editor, I could say in this particular cell or this particular row, you can only insert carousels, and this further one down, this test example one.
Yeah, so if you created that carousel entry, you would just get another, when you come into your row configuration, you'd basically get another one of these, so one called carousel with your new type, so you just be able to allow that in there. And like I say, it just gives it a really nice polished look for your editors. So you could just use the standard Doctype one and let them choose it from the drop down, but it's really nice to give them that contextual thing with icons as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, very, very nice. There's a ton of questions flying in whilst you've been doing this demo. So I don't know who wants to take them, either one of you. So let's start with Lee Messenger. He asks, the allowed Doctypes kind of pattern or config that you've just shown, will it work on like a regex style pattern? So for example, all Doctypes that start with maybe grid underscore or something else like that. So you could just do like a filter.
Yes.
Short and sweet. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Care to demo it, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Can try. So let's just do
Oh, seriously?
anything that starts example. Let's have a look.
One step ahead of the game.
Oh,
Clear,
it's probably a legal character. I think that's just broken the editor. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'll have to double check that. That's a start with character for your regex, so I think that might be an illegal character in passed in the JSON. It's not like either of those.
Should we take a few more questions?
Yeah,
whilst you can you can hack in the background. Very, very good. No, nice. So Arnold Visser, I always get his surname wrong, but Arnold asks, isn't this a bit like Le Blender, but then using Doctypes as the presets instead of setting the fields on the grid editor itself, like with Le Blender?
Le Blender is Le Blender does two things. One, it gives you a nice way of editing this configuration file. Oh, I just realised that's why I broke it. Yeah, the config. Yeah, Le Blender gives you a nice way of editing this config file, and then they do give you an advanced builder for creating complex data, but they suffer from the same things as like embedded content did in the past. You can only use, from what I understand anyway, you can only use a subset of property editors or data types.
Yeah, it seems limited from what I've seen from demos.
This is what we tried to get around. So it just uses Doctypes. If you know Doctypes, then you should know how to use and build custom data structures. So yeah.
Sweet. It looks like, have you figured your regex problem out?
No.
We'll take some more questions in the meantime. Dave Westerbergs, I always get his surname wrong again, but Dave asks, would this work with ZBU kind of models builder and/or Ditto, so you can have strongly typed models?
Okay, I can answer the Ditto side of it, which is yeah, absolutely, because that's why we did it this way. Yeah, so it's all to do with iPublish content. So Ditto, just all Ditto needs is an iPublish content node, and then it can map that to whatever POCO you pass to it, or will try to do that anyway. So yeah, it just works in the same way as any other iPublish content. With the with Stefan's model builder. I'm trying to think of how it would fit in. Yeah, because these are nested within the grid, and how you access that property, because this is almost like a nested iPublish content within the wider grid. So I'm not too sure how the model builder will access that. I'm sure somebody clever will write a property value converter to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure. So have you either of you got an example of that Ditto conversion laying around, or is it in a project that we can't see, unfortunately?
Yeah, I've got nothing at hand, but it would just be a case of just showing, when you get the model within the partial that Matt was showing before, it would just be model.content.as, and then because Ditto all runs through an extension method, so it can handle that. There is another feature that Matt's not shown yet, which is to do with surface controllers. Matt, was you gonna get around to that? I don't want to jump ahead.
No, I've not got a demo for that one, but
okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. So there is another feature there that if you have a surface controller that matches the same name as the alias, so it's all based on naming conventions, it can run through the surface controller first. So this doesn't interfere with kind of root hijacking, because that just uses Umbraco's MVC render controller, render model controller, or whatever the name is. But this just goes through surface controllers. So if it matches one, it can run through the controller before it hits the partial. So you can do any kind of manipulation or strongly typed stuff conversion in there, and then you can pass it a strongly typed model to your partial. So we've added that extra layer of complexity or cleverness, I don't know.
Yeah, so I suppose this is now a follow-up question probably from myself. So part of the issue was, or with currently the HQ version or the core version of the grid, is that there's no way to kind of index or search the content in the grid. So with the potential of this iPublish content and obviously things like Ditto, is it possible to then start injecting stuff into an examine index so it's searchable?
not currently.
Yeah.
Nope. Okay.
Stuff is the same as what the grid does. So I know HQ that's something very important on their list to be looking at, and we did show them this kind of prior to releasing it, and they love it, and they understand that it's going to suffer from the same. But so I think the plan is that we're just going to work alongside them in terms of what they're looking to fix, and make sure that they both have this option kind of moving forward. So yeah, it is the problem when you're storing stuff as complex JSON, it just doesn't fit into a Lucene index as nicely as just raw simple data type. So not currently, but hopefully on the horizon from a Umbraco HQ perspective as well anyway.
Fantastic.
On other news, I did just get Lee Messenger's example working.
Okay,
so,
cool.
As you can see there, I've got a regex for must basically saying starts with example.
So what that looked like what you was trying earlier. So what was different?
This is the thing with JSON. I'd lost a curly brace.
Oh.
So yeah, so this just says anything that starts with example, and as you can see here, it just shows two data types. So if you
prove it to me, let's create example data free.
Yeah.
I trust you that it works, but it'd be nice to see it working in action. Okay, so you've even got like a master document type that you've probably got inherited properties from.
I'm just using it as a folder really, just to store my data nodes together, but we'll see. So,
So yeah, with you adding tabs there, how does it handle tabs in the UI of the kind of the panel that slides out? How is it just kind of gone?
I'll show you.
Yeah.
A picture says 1,000 words.
It certainly does.
Example data 3. So
nice.
it's pulled in that one automatically, and it does them as field sets. So you get them separated by kind of little labels. So if you do want to, obviously you're opening it in a dialog. So the consensus is you are doing complex data, but if you're doing tons and tons of properties, you probably need to readdress your content strategy really.
Yeah.
But if you do want to if you do have little groups, then this is what it does. It just gives you little field sets. So it'll ignore anything that's on the general properties tab.
Yep.
So and then it just reads all the other tabs and just lists all the properties.
Very nice. I'm still kind of blown away at the minute. So Dave has a follow-up question. I'm sure that many, or all of us are probably having the same question, is has this been submitted as a pull request to the core?
No, as I say, we have discussed it with HQ, and they really love the idea. I think it is potential core material. It's definitely what HQ are thinking as well. I guess it's just a case of we're at a position where we can release this. To put it into core would leave a gap, and I think it's just too useful for people. And obviously, this installs on 7.2.2, so basically anybody who's got the grid, this can work with it at the moment. So there is a view that we look to moving it into core. I think it's nice to get a sampling at the moment. Because we can see then if people really like it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine you're going to get a lot of installs, and you're probably going to get a lot of useful feedback in terms of it being a separate kind of project or package or sideline, and then use that feedback to kind of polish or improve your kind of pull request that hopefully gets submitted back to the core.
We want to take I mean, when we discussed it with Niels and some of the other guys from the core team, is that we're going to kind of treat it the way like things like with U components, a multi-node tree picker, whereas that was a separate package. It was tried and tested. Everyone sort of got into it and was behind it. Moves to the core, and it just it just fits more natural, and there's less.
Yeah, I think that's a natural way to kind of get good features or functionality like this kind of road tested, so to speak, and you know that there's a good uptake, and it's stable and it works for the 90% of people, and things like that.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at some more questions. Matt, as always, there's a lot of beard envy going on. So Lee Messenger said, I forgot to say hello to your actual beard when we done the introductions, because your beard is almost a separate entity in itself.
It's got its own Twitter account.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it what, Matt Brailsford's beard?
That's too long. It's Matt B's beard.
Also, Ismail asks, what are you actually using on your beard? I think we should just rename this the Beard Hour.
Yeah, why not? I use a load of Murdoch products.
Fair enough. Well, we still got more beard questions. Richard Terrace asks, how long have you been growing the beard?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Lee,
this was meant to be about Doctype Grid Editor.
No.
We're gonna be releasing Matt's beard as a package.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just have a quick skim. Rest is actually kind of quietened down for the time being. I'm sure that some more questions will come in a moment. Is there any other points to kind of demo? Like Lee said, obviously there was some stuff about Surface controllers that we didn't unfortunately get a chance to see.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that was kind of hidden, or kind of like until we start using this, we're not really going to know what it does, or find like these extra cool neat tricks?
I think that covers it from a grid editor's perspective. It's basically to allow you to use the Doctypes as blueprints, and then on the front end, when you come to render it in your partials, it's all available as published content. So that's the magic, really. It goes in and comes out basically as if it was node content.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. So, what? A question from myself. What's the name of this then? What is the official name of this package?
Doctype Grid Editor.
Original. Fair enough.
What does what it says on the tin. That's
fair enough.
Need a gimmicky name, I think, with this one.
So with our lovely Twitter clues earlier today, care to fill me in with the correlation between the eggs and the kind of the fry up?
We're not there with the eggs yet, but with the fry up was just it was a griddle. So you can do cool things with the grid. Or change the way you think about using the grid. Yeah.
Should we go into the leaf? Should we go into the eggs?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Warren can take it. I don't know.
The eggs?
Oh, what is there like? Is this just round one?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh.
Eggs. Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to this next part, which is so now that we've got this kind of angular way of rendering out of Doctypes and sort of having that on the page, when we built this, the suggestion to Matt was we've got this inside the grid. Could this just be a property editor on its own? Can we kind of just do that? Just reuse Doctypes as properties. So we followed that idea, and yeah, you can.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So demo number 2.
Can you see my screen?
I certainly can.
Cool. So what we've been showing is stuff in the grid, which is good if you want to do grid stuff, but what if you just want to do lists of stuff? So we also created a property editor that allows you to create lists.
Oh, nice.
So again, this is using a Doctype to define the data structure for each list item. And it's following styles from the grid, so it keeps the consistency. You can do everything that you would expect to do in a grid. You can move things around. And again, it does, because it comes from Doctypes, we can use things like descriptions. These are all standard data types. And you can do nice fancy things.
Oh.
So a bit of inline AngularJS things going on there. So this is just for editing lists. So
This is awesome.
We just do
So again, from a question that I would probably have, so how does this differentiate between why can't I think of the name? It's lost me. Kevin's super duper archetype. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we love Archetype because we helped develop it, with Kevin and Tom and everyone else who contributed to it. So it's something that we thought there was a need for, but I don't think we kind of made the connection until we started doing this kind of work that we could reuse Doctypes here, and or even that it was even possible. So we kind of just followed an idea. So I guess that's the kind of where it went. It wasn't trying to sort of redo things. We still use Archetype as well. So yeah.
No, this is nice.
But yeah, but you'll see. I think when Matt carries on his demo, you'll see the kind of the benefit here in a minute. It's still powerful.
I've just entered a little bit of data into these.
Yeah, I was going to say. So what was you just doing there in the background?
Just filled in a few bits of information, and I've just got here the bottom navigation partial for the standard template. So this partial down here, so for rendering links. So what I'm just going to do is get rid of finders and just say, well, maybe I just want to list the team members. So I've just commented out the finders bit. I'm including a partial, and in this partial, all I'm doing is using the standard way of getting a strongly typed model, and we're just asking for the team list as an enumerable list of iPublish contents. So that's what you do. You just ask for the property as a list of content nodes.
This is awesome.
it pulls it back as a list, and then you can just loop through them. And again, you can do the same thing. Just read off property values. I'm only doing simple things here, but it's the same. It does the same things as within the grid. So if you've got a link property, you can get
this
it to
is
strongly.
My mind's kind of blown at the minute. So this is you've kind of done all the magic for kind of the property value converters, or or the voodoo magic of kind of hydrating all this stuff for us and allowing us to kind of create simple lists and kind of the razor and the models that we all know and love.
Yeah. So the idea is just to try and reuse that as much as reuse what's there. So did I save that? Just have a look. Yeah. So you can see there, that's now just listing through, and we can kind of nip through those properties. So because this is a data type, this appears in your data types collection. So we've got what did I call it? Example nested content. So this one's called nested content. So you have a nested content picker. In here, you just tell it which doc type you want to use as the blueprint. We do things slightly different on this because of the way that the list works. It really does need to be short and succinct lists of properties. So we just render one tab. So if you don't provide us with a tab name, we'll just grab the first tab and render its properties. But what you can do is just give us a tab name in the data type, and it'll render the properties on that tab. So that can be quite handy because that means you could have one doc type with a lot of property setups on it. If you didn't want to have like cluttier doc types, area with loads of data doc types, you could just do one and have different tabs instead. But you can use it either way. It'll just use the first tab if you don't provide one. You can use a nice little bit of Angular syntax. These are like the property aliases, so you can generate, when you saw me typing in my name on the front and it was generating the label in the list, this is what it's using. So it'll at runtime run a bit of AngularJS against the properties in the list and generate a name. And you can do things like minimum, maximum items, and whether you need to confirm deletes and hide label. So like the minimum, maximum items thing, so we've got in there, it'll just do, you can just keep adding, and then when you get to the end, you just don't get a plus symbol anymore.
Nice.
And if you've got a minimum items, it'll force that many items in the list, so you just can't go beyond it. And when you see the list for the first time, you'll get kind of you'll get 3 items in there by default.
So how would that work with validation then? So if I don't fill out those 3 items, would it save, or would it just create me 3 empty items?
It'd create you 3 empty items. You can't. If you've got validation on these properties, the validation on these will run. So you can require those fields. So yeah, that should allow it to force. That would force 3 nodes, but then you'd have to have field validation on these to force which properties you actually want to be mandatory and things.
Nice. Very, very nice.
And then I guess the only other element on that is that it does have a special mode. So let's have a look. Example nested content. So special magic mode is if you say it's a minimum item of 1 and then a maximum item of 1, it has to be just 1, then it actually stops being a list and it almost becomes a little field set.
Nice.
So it gets rid of all the listy type things, and this could be handy for things like like we're saying, maybe banner images where you want to group certain properties and maybe tabs isn't what you want to do, so you could just have like a banner property type, and in there it's broken down as title, image, link, things like that. And it almost makes like a little field set. So when you're using it in special magic mode,
is that the official name in documentation? No. Special magic mode?
No, I just made it up. So once it's in special magic mode, when you request the data on the front end, you can actually just request it as iPublished content rather than enumerable and getting the first item. If you just request it as a single published content item, it just pulls it back as 1 item.
Nice. And I noticed another thing in your your partial that you're actually even doing if checking if the model actually has a value as well.
Yep. So all the helper methods should work the same, because as far as Umbraco is concerned, it's an iPublished content node. So.
Brill. So even if I've written some custom extension methods for iPublished content in my own solution, they would just continue working as normal.
They would.
Awesome. This is groundbreaking stuff. Keep going.
Oh, that's it.
Wow. I thought there was going to be like a Steve Jobs kind of style. Oh, and here's one more thing. But no, it's you guys should really give yourselves a big pat on the back. This is awesome, and I think it's really going to change how people structure their data and potentially rethink how they're going to do doctypes now. So whilst you've been doing that demo, Matt, we've had a few more questions, as always. Stream in.
My beard.
No more beard ones for now. So Lee Messenger asks, have you used this in anger, as in, have you used this on a large site, as in Carlsberg?
Okay, so it's not used in production yet. What this is all part of is kind of refining what we've done with Carlsberg so far. So it's still kind of like at the, in the development process. I mean, one thing just to kind of note, obviously big thanks to Carlsberg, because this kind of sounds all kind of geeky and soppy now, but it's because of the projects like Carlsberg who are going to use sort of agencies like mine, where we sort of want to give back to the community. So they, Carlsberg fund us to kind of do this cool stuff, and our company can bring Matt in to sort of to help develop this stuff and then give it back to the community. It all kind of seems fulfilling, and the team at Carlsberg really endorsed this stuff as well. So yes, big kudos to those.
Awesome.
I mean, it's not used in production yet, just to answer Lee's question, but it will be in time.
The thing is, as well, though, whilst that one isn't in production, this was based upon code that we did for Mortar, which was, like Lee was saying, was a grid editor, a grid that we developed a while ago, and that is in production on Carlsberg. So basically, all the logic that's in the grid editors and stuff, that is in production. It's just in its current state as the Doctype grid editor package. That's not, but the code really is.
So I was going to say, mainly it's the UI is probably a bit different, and the kind of the business logic under the hood is pretty much the same.
Yep.
Okay, nice. So James South asks, is editing the JSON file the only way to create Doctype grids?
Yes, but that's just because that's how the grid editor works. So, like I was saying, that seems to be what LeBlender's trying to kind of fix a little bit in their package. So they've given you a UI to be able to set those up, but that is kind of the only way, without developing something new, that's the way you edit the grid editor config. So
okay, cool. So Peter Gregory asks, can I put one of these, I presume he's referring to your second demo, the kind of the Doctype editor type things, I don't know what you're calling them, inside the Doctype grid editor?
Yeah.
Total inception, yeah?
Yeah. So the second demo that we did is we called it nested content.
Yep.
So can you put nested content within the Doctype? Yep, totally. You can do that. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I was going to say something else, but I don't really want to say it because I think Niels would slit my throat. Which is you can't. Don't do it. You can put a grid.
You could is probably the best term.
Within the other one. So technically, yeah, you can put all sorts of stuff in there, but don't do it
because that's just insane. But very, very clever that you can.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. So yes, that's a lesson out there, people. Think about your content editors.
Yeah.
Be nice to them.
Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Absolutely.
You can do bad Doctypes now anyway. So.
Oh, exactly.
It's like everything. You've got to use it right in the right situation.
Of course. Yeah. Let's just take a So Robert Foster's giving you kind of an invite at the next Melbourne Umbraco meetup. Do you guys want to present this over Skype?
Oh, I was hoping flights were involved then.
It's a bit ambitious.
Yeah, I think I don't mind. I just can't think of the time zone difference off the top of my head, but yeah.
Awesome. Some other things are coming in. Paul Wright says, looks like bye-bye to global assets libraries now is gone in terms of how he seems to be structuring his content. And some other stuff. Ismail Myatt says, this is awesome. Brailsford and Kelleher are the Sasha and Digweed of the Umbraco world. You guys rock. No idea. Is it some northern reference or is it some old reference that I'm just too young to get?
I don't know.
I'll ask.
But I'm not cool. I'm not cool enough.
I'll ask you later.
We're too busy coding.
Yeah.
Clearly, with stuff like this. Let's just take some. There's basically the rest is. Oh, hang on. There's the actual question. Carl Saguna, are there any data types you know that won't work with this?
The only one we really truly know that doesn't is the upload field. It's mainly because if you've ever developed property editors, there is some can have code behind that runs on when it's saving to the database, when it's pulling data back from the database, getting it ready for the editor. But the image upload property editor has to do special things in terms of looking for files in the request.
Yep.
And it's kind of expecting that there would only be one property that file's associated with. So when you start doing properties in properties, it wouldn't be able to figure out which file it's based upon. So we say it's like 99% of properties, but as long as it's using standard behavior and you're not doing anything kind of funky and special, then they should work. So
nice. Let's just quickly scan any more questions before we kind of wrap up. Let's just quickly look. Oh yeah. So Mike Litzel maybe. He asked, is this on our Umbraco already?
It is.
Really?
About 2 seconds ago.
Oh, awesome. So it's
Yes.
now live, and we
So
can go.
both. There's two packages. There's one the Doctype grid editor, and then the nested content. So yeah, downloadable packages. There's some screenshots on we have the repositories which have been up on GitHub for probably the last week or so. Which no one seemed to notice. You release these open source things, everyone's like, what? Huh?
Clearly
So
more people
that's
need
up
to
on
be
there.
following you on GitHub, Lee.
You know what? It's like coding in the public, but it's still hidden. No one knows. And then so they're open source, open to collaboration. So yeah, as pretty much all of our packages with myself and Matt we're always open to collaboration, open to ideas, open. Yeah.
Just open.
Open.
Awesome.
Come in.
That sounds nice. So let's just quickly go through some of the other messages. John Walker says, great work, chaps. Lee Messenger says, wow, this is really awesome. Mikkel Johansson says, wow, high five, you rock big time. Peter Gregory says, special magic mode enabled. Mike.
That is what it'll be called now.
Yes, rename it. Mike Lizetzel says awesome, and I think that's it for now. But there's a lot of love for this package or packages, shall we say? And thank you very, very much, guys.
Awesome.
Is there anything else you want to add or kind of wrap up before we go?
Well, there is. No, there isn't.
No, that's easy.
Yeah,
No,
I couldn't take any more.
Awesome stuff, guys. have a great weekend, and thank you so much for demoing these packages for us today.
No problem.
Cool.
No problem.
Cool. All right,
Excellent.
thanks.
Cheers, guys. See you later. Ta-da. Bye.
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 Bye.